letter, he was about to be released from his first Roman imprisonment. You want to know what his first Roman imprisonment was, when it happened? Read the book of Acts. The book of Acts tells us about his first Roman imprisonment. Church tradition says he was released from prison then, according to church tradition, did another missionary journey as far up as to Spain. This is what church tradition says. And was later then arrested, at which time he wrote 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 4. Paul says the time of my departure is at hand. He says, I have fought a good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. By the time 2 Timothy, he writes that, he knows his time is second Roman imprisonment. But here in Philippians, he's about to be released. There's a sense of joy, expectation if you read this book. And there's just so much jewels and nuggets of treasure to be had. Philippians 3, look at verse 13. Last sign of growth here. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I use that on Sunday mornings a lot. Forgetting, or I said, do not count myself to have apprehended. Isn't it nice to know even Paul, the apostle, didn't know everything? He said, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching for those things which are before. The last sign of growth here is that we are going to look at a greater and greater desire for a holiness in our lives. A greater desire for a holiness. We don't hear that preached enough anymore, but that having that desire for holiness in your life. The point here is that by forgetting what's behind and striving to go forward, we are growing in our walk with God. As we grow in our walk with Christ, in our Lord, as we grow by going forward, we're getting closer to Him. Church, understand, you cannot get too close to the Lord in your walk in this world. Are you listening to me? You cannot get too close. We need to be going forward, getting as close as we can. Church holiness is about getting as close to the Lord as you can. Doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. It just means you're striving to be as close to Jesus as you can be. We need to be like that woman that we talked about a few weeks ago. Touch the hem of the Lord's garment. Church, that's where we need to be. Close enough we can touch his garment. We can touch his robe. We can touch him. It's about filling your life with all those things that are pleasing to Him. I like Oswald Chambers, one of my favorite devotions. I have both he and Charles Spurgeon. Charles Spurgeon has his morning and evening devotions, and Oswald Chambers has his devotion, My Utmost for His Highness. I like it. One of the devotions, he says, one of the phrases that I first read it stuck out with me, and it applies so very much right here, thinking about holiness. Oswald Chambers said his prayer was that God would fill him to the drowning of himself. You hear what that says? He says, fill me to the drowning of me. Church, that's what holiness is about. Being so filled with the Holy Spirit. Being so filled with God. Being close enough that He could fill you, drown out those old, undesirable, old nature stuff. Fill me to the drowning of me, He says. Oh, I like that. Church, that's what's needful. That's what's needful. Number 3, what are the means that God uses to help us grow in grace? Let's go back over to, let's turn back to 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 2. What are the means that God uses to help us grow in grace? 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 2. Well, I'll tell you what, let's start back at verse 1. Therefore lay aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking. This, by the way, is where we're going to be at next week, by the way. As newborn babes, desire the pure milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. Do you see what Peter says there? God uses His word, church, to grow you in His grace. Oh, you know what? It just really burns me up. So many times people say, Pastor, I understand what you're saying, but I just can't understand that King James Version. gospel. If you can't, get something else. We're in an age and a day and a time, church, where there are a lot of Bibles in more modern English that are very good.